Demystifying Zero Trust Architecture, a practical guide for policy-based access controls. So my name's Emma, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm excited to spend the next hour with you as we unpack one of the most talked about, but often misunderstood frameworks in cybersecurity, zero trust. Our goal today is simplify the conversation and focus on practical, actionable steps that you can amplify in your own organizations. I'm joined today by Adil Khan, CEO here at SafePass, who I will ask to briefly introduce himself shortly, but just a few housekeeping items before we do get started. So attendees are on mute. The session will be recorded for on-demand viewing after the session, and we will have a Q&A at the end. So feel free to pop your questions in the control panel, and hopefully we'll have time for those at the end of the session today. So here's just a brief agenda of what we're going to be covering today, or some of the things we're going to be talking about. So how zero trust principles intersect with AI and evolving governance trends, how to map zero trust to access governance controls, and strategies to mitigate risk and practical steps. So Adil, do you want to briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll dive into the session?
Yeah, thank you, Emma, and thank you everybody for attending today's session. I think it's a very timely topic, especially in light of all the non-human identities that we're hearing. So my experience here at SafePass, I'm the founder and CEO at SafePass. Prior to this, I spent time as a chief executive of a publicly listed company in the US, company traded on NASDAQ. And so my experience is around financial controls, financial management, and really safeguarding the enterprise from a governance perspective. And that's what we do at SafePass. We have products and services and solutions really that help customers deal with the pain points around governance. I've written a book as well. It's called Governance, Risk, and Compliance Handbook for Oracle. That's where I spend most of my time, is helping Oracle e-business and other suites of products that Oracle owns, including the latest cloud applications. So that's in a nutshell what I bring to the table, and I'll dig right into the topic to make sure we can get all the key topics covered. So let's just start by level setting on zero trust as NIST has defined it many years ago. And if you want to learn more about our view on how zero trust works in the NIST framework and how to deploy that, we have a number of podcasts as well that you can listen to on your favorite podcast channel. So for this webinar, what we're going to do is walk you through some of these new developments in light of technologies, emerging technologies, specifically the pain points we're hearing from our customers around zero trust frameworks in the context of AI and other technologies. So, zero trust assumes basically that, as the name says, is do not trust and verify everything, right? So the reason for that is that organizations have been in the news for leaking data, having ransomware attacks and other cyber security risks. So, and identities are pervasive. So we have lots of new identities, including the non-human identities now, that are putting pressure on our business, our teams, to manage the security of the enterprise. And so essentially the components of zero trust, as you can see on the slides, and I'll add some examples to it. So let's talk about loss of control over data and decision making, right? As I mentioned, there are a couple of reasons we see in the industry that's happening. One is obviously those attacks, external attacks, but also on the inside, the organization has become much more complex in my lifetime of 25 plus years of doing this work, where things aren't tucked away behind the closed firewalls, if you will. They're out on the internet. We're communicating and operating on a global scale over public networks. So that's where the leakage is happening, where information is shared with with folks that may not have the rights to access that information. So it's built into that whole idea of principle of least privilege, right? That's kind of the modern way of thinking about data, and the decision-making components is also very critical to us because we spend a lot of time with our customers helping them with the insights they need to control their business better. And when the data is poor quality, we also include that as a lack of trust, right? Where your management is unable to make good decisions because they can't rely on the underlying data. And those of you that work with data all the time know that there are copies of data, there's stale data, there's misrepresentation of data, there's inconsistency in different levels. So one system may have an employee address listed with abbreviation TX, other system might have it spelled out as Texas, and when you try to run a report, they don't come together. So these are all problems that decision makers face, and it can bring down an enterprise to a halt instead of moving at the speed of light, which is what's needed in this environment. Compliance and risk and regulations, right? So that's additional pressure. We have talked a lot in the past few years about data protection under the GDPR framework, as well as the California CCPA framework, which is adopted mostly in the United States. But I think the main point is there's a drive from the regulators and penalties on businesses that don't, comply with those requirements. So, for example, at SafePass, we have hundreds of customers that rely on us to maintain and process their data to produce results. So, we follow the same practices in-house. There's some customers that require data residency and movement of data across enterprise, masking of data during transfer, and encryption of data during transfer, masking of data when it's at rest or even viewed by a user, as well as scrambling of data and again encryption of data at rest. So those are all some of the principles that are required to meet the guidelines of compliance and ensure that you are following the policies of the governing bodies that operate your business. Shadow AI is a common problem. I think even if you don't have AI yet, there's a recent MIT study about how many AI projects have not been successful. I think that if I recall correctly, only 5% of companies have been able to recognize value from AI. So, and I think we have a podcast on that as well. So you can read more about it. I won't have time to drill down in there today. But employees are using these tools, right? So what does that mean in the age of AI? What does it mean to protect data? And the main problem is, as you're probably reading the same news I'm reading, that OpenAI is getting sued by the New York Times because of the data, massive amount of data that they've taken on to train their LLMs, which might be proprietary information. And any website that an AI bot is scraping today does not explicitly authorize it to be used for commercial purposes, right? So you could be impacted whether you're building AI solutions for your company or you're just using the products, So that's something we'll touch on a little bit. Security vulnerabilities, again, we're seeing in our world, or a lot of Oracle customers use SQL injections is a concern. So that's something where we're building protection for our customers and their systems, where you can inject SQL into a user page that can essentially disrupt your business and create losses. Models themselves can be poisoned, right? We have all seen some news where certain LLMs started to give biased information, which was not the intent. And then again, same thing that I mentioned before, data leaks. There are many other cases. I think if you're not even using AI today, there's the SaaS sprawl, right, which we didn't mention here on the screen, but I definitely want to call your attention to it, because that's a challenge for our customers that today have problems with being able to essentially control access to where the data is floating around between different systems, right? Whether they're in the cloud or legacy systems on premise, the data may be well protected in those legacy systems behind the firewall. But let's say you want to put up a new supplier portal using AI, you may have, or even a SaaS application. Like a few of our customers have adopted Coupa as an example. It's a great application for procurement, but it's a cloud application, and you need to make sure that you protect yourself and your data against the risk as it flows from your legacy ERP systems into, or maybe modern ERP systems into that application. So that's another key area for Zero Trust in my mind, is the SaaS sprawl, which is present today, even if you are not interested in moving forward with an AI initiative. So I think that's in a nutshell what I see. Let's move on. Yeah. So Emma, this is a great slide for us to talk about, what's happening to Zero Trust in light of the AI trends. So let's start with I won't have time to kind of walk through in each one in detail, but I'll cover at a high level each of these topics. So what is AI-driven risk adaptive access, right? So this is a kind of a modern approach or a trend that we're learning about, where machines can continuously monitor for anomalous access and detect risks as they occur. It aligns with NIST as well. So from a solutioning perspective, we talked a little bit earlier about the problems AI presents, but AI also presents great opportunities and solutions for us. So here's an example where we're working and digging into the capabilities of AI to improve our monitoring capabilities for our clients and apply the lessons we can learn through AI and machine learning that is a lot faster than human learning, for example, to pick up the patterns and pull up policies to control access. The next item is transparency and auditability. So again, NIST being our framework and a guideline that seems to be best adopted by, I guess, around the world, but definitely in the US. It stresses the ability for you to justify what your access decisions. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about Zero Trust earlier, least privilege, policies of least privilege. Those are part of your decision making that should be included in your auditability reports and make your decisions around access to data for identities more transparent. And that also makes it easier for you to be audit ready with certifications and control logs and so forth that are so essential to ensure the effectiveness of the controls around your access of your systems and the data that those systems hold. The third element is the Zero Trust guardrails for AI. And that's another trend that we're seeing emerge recently, where there's a lot of talk. If you go out to OpenAI or other AI leaders in the market, you'll see that they're talking a lot about guardrails, but when I dig into the details, they're not quite executing on those talks, right? So NIST has come out there and given us a very good roadmap in this latest SB 853 for AI systems. We have covered some of these details around this framework in our podcast that I mentioned earlier. If you're interested, you want to dig details into it. So basically what this framework helps us do is suggest that for the guardrails around your AI and cloud should be based on fine-grained access controls for applications, workloads, processes, etc. And as many of you familiar with SafePass would know, that SafePass is built ground up on fine-grained level of control. So it really aligns with your use of SafePass with the framework and the guidance we have received from NIST. In the AI world, that's more important than ever, because let's say that you have bots, chat bots, or if you have agents, agentic AI, which is the next big evolution of AI. So in that world, you're giving access to, let's pick a simple example, someone to do your purchasing of your airline tickets. So what does that mean? Well, you've given them access to some sort of profile of your employees, of what the airline they prefer to fly with. Obviously, to register someone in an airline, you have to share personal information like their frequent flyer number, their email address, their possibly their national ID, if that's required by the airline system, date of birth, right, email, so forth. So yeah, so those are the kind of examples you'll have where now you've granted AI access to that. So AI can now look at your schedules, they have access to your calendar, they also have access to funding, some way of paying for that, right? So it could be your corporate card, it could be your company's purchasing system, depending on how you purchase travel in your organization. So now the bots have, or agents have access to all of these very fine-grained capabilities across multiple sources of data that you've granted them access. Now, we know that under Zero Trust, we don't want to make that access unlimited because that's only required when, let's say, they're making a airline booking for Emma. But when that is done, we want that access to go away, the data to be cleaned out. So that's what I mean by guardrails, right? So Zero Trust guardrails will ensure that we are constantly monitoring this privilege granted to an AI agent or to a cloud application for that matter to perform an API task. And as soon as those tasks are completed, the access is immediately taken away. So if there is an attack on the surface of the enterprise IT shield or digital platform, that the damage is minimized and mitigated. Let's move on to fairness and policy integrity. That's another aspect of trends in the AI governance world, where the models can have built-in bias based on where the sources of information is coming into the LLM models. And it can work in many different ways. First thing you can do is look at what level of access do models need, or the agents in this case needs, or even your traditional identities need to segregate and limit their access to sensitive data. And again, follow the principle of least privilege data, and that also builds itself into compliance with a equitable and just approach, which is consistent with your company policies. So another angle that's putting pressure on our industry to improve the fairness and policy through better access governance and controls. And finally, continuous oversight and human accountability. So we like to think that humans should always be in the loop. As folks that come from a governance perspective, I think that that innate ability that humans have to know right from wrong from birth onwards is built into our DNA, right? And whether you call it consciousness or whatever, and AI does not have that. That's a big difference. So accountability always resides with humans, and I think we're excited to hear that NIST agrees with us. And so we always want to keep human in the loop of a workflow that's enabled by AI. That's the present thinking of the industry, AI industry as well. And you've seen those disclaimers even for the top LLM models and chatbots that there's always a disclaimer that, you know, this may not be correct information. It should be checked by humans, right? So it sort of aligns with our approach to this need. So these are some of the key trends that's driving us to help the industry and our customers specifically leverage the AI capabilities to mitigate the risks that are also generated as we modernize our businesses through SaaS applications, and as these applications embed AI capabilities into these applications. So what we have done here to help you make sense of this is really given you a kind of a roadmap on how to map your zero trust to address the risks of AI. And so let's just go through item by item here. In a nutshell, summarized, obviously, we can drill down for you based on your needs. So how do you know, the first question we hear is, how do you know what the AI is doing or basing decisions on? Very common question we get from the market. And basically, it's linked to the transparency, explainability. Also, many people call that observability, to observe the activities of an AI bot, for example, the monitoring of the model itself, and back to the point we made earlier about keeping the human in the loop. So some of the solutions as examples in the last column are requiring AI outputs to be validated against known standards, right? So as you know, SafePass has the ability to look at multiple data sources and validate those data sources. So we're leveraging that technology through Safe Insight to really apply that to the AI outputs so that they can be baselined against the traditional static information that's available. So for example, you're dealing with a supplier, and supplier, whether through a bot or direct communication, has requested a payment term of 999 years, right? You can do that with a bot. Now, one way the bot can respond to that, hey, I want to do this business. My job is to onboard a supplier. I will onboard a supplier with a payment term of this this number, which is an error. Obviously, supplier would not agree to it, but that's what the bot has proposed to maximize the cash flow, right? So you will have a problem onboarding a supplier with a payment of that crazy number. But if you had that validated against a standard of payment terms that are acceptable to you, let's say between net 30 to net 60, then that problem will not occur, right? So that's an example of how we're building safeguards within our platform to protect you against the challenges of AI on making decisions that are biased to optimize for maybe best cash flow, but it will result in no vendor wanting to do business with you. The second item is, what if sensitive data leaks into AI systems? That's probably one of the most common questions I'm getting for the past few months is, as customers are trying to figure out LLMs, they're buying their own infrastructure or renting it, and then they're doing experiments, starting with, simple things like the Copilot, which has been around for over a year now. So what we're seeing there is the need is to, link that to a strict set of access controls and to make sure that AI and the inference pipelines are clean. In other words, can have controls in place to ensure that data doesn't leave your premise or your control through these pipelines and get extracted unknowingly to you. And so the solution is, an example of a solution, the last column is preventing shadow AI tools from ingesting sensitive data like your HR, legal, maybe other trade secrets that are unique to your business. So again, we can build policies in SafePass, as you know, to a very fine-grained level. So if you have you can characterize your policies in terms of the type of identity and the source of identity. And we're introducing a number of new capabilities in our IGA functionality, where through our tools, you'll be able to do even further targeting of types of identities like non-human versus human, same thing with roles, privileges, and so forth throughout the enterprise, which enables you to put further policies and restrictions to ensure compliance with data security. The third one is a question we get often is, what if the AI is compromised or produces harmful output? So, we talked about model poisoning as a key trend, which we have covered in our AI podcast in much more length. So that's a common question we get. Continuously monitoring, and doing essentially red team AI systems and safe failovers, right? So that's some of the controls that we need to investigate, and the solution that we're putting here is treating AI as a potential attack vector rather than a trusted entity, which is absolutely true, right? Don't treat AI like it's a trusted partner, or because it's a machine, it's not gonna commit fraud, as an example, right? I often hear those kinds of things. Hey, it's a tool, it's a work tool. My Excel cannot create fraud. Why would my OpenAI create fraud? It's not the same thing, because it does. While it doesn't have the consciousness of a human, it does have the ability to manipulate your data to maximize the outputs, right? So that's where SafePass is building controls specifically to address the continuous monitoring aspect of AI that will prevent these types of risks. Next, we have how do we keep up with the evolving AI risks? And risks are changing. I mentioned a few minutes ago about the evolution of AI from LLM chatbots to agentics, and then there's discussions about having teams and teams of agentics and purpose-built agentics. There's a lot of exciting ideas out there. So basically what we hear is you need controls to be more dynamic, right? So your policies have to be evolving and adjusting, and your compliance audits have to be agile to address controls within those evolving policies, and protection against any drifts within your AI models, being able to detect them early and identify that some risks have, whether it is through intentional or unintentional reasons, have been introduced into the system, right? So the solution again is to implement policies that are AI driven, right? So AI implementing the AI use policies that are then controlled through a monitoring control, such as what we offer in SafePass, and they're adaptive. How do we prevent misuse of data in training or output? So the way you address that question is through basically, as I said earlier, is encryption, anonymization, masking, for example, using some sort of a governance framework for AI data sets. So in my example of AI agent buying your airline tickets, you may be able to anonymize with the agents that your airline has stood up for you to communicate agent to agent. And that would be a game changer in terms of performance, being able to optimize those mundane processes and make your organization more productive. So yeah, I mean, these are some great new examples that you can use and dig into it through coming research that we're making available to our customers through podcasts and these webinars. So stay tuned for more on each of these important topics that we have briefly touched on in here. Yeah, so next we want to talk a little bit about mapping zero trust to what we do here at SafePath in terms of access governance. So in a nutshell, and I'll talk through each one of them, is to automate access certification, right? And that's a foundational component or a pillar of your zero trust strategy, and is widely adapted by the market for many years. So what's new today? Well, what's new today is the types of identities and the focus on level of privileges or the fine-grained nature of privileges that are being granted to identities in this current world. So automating access certification is not, the way it was 15 years ago or 20 years ago when it showed up on the map. It's very different today. It's something we hear from audit firms. We work with all the major audit firms, and they're getting guidance from, let's say, their oversight committees like the PCAOB here in the United States, which is a concern because you don't want to have the folks and reviewers in your organization simply rubber stamp what they did last time, because as I mentioned earlier, the risk is much more dynamic today, whether it's through AI or through your just explosion of automation through SaaS and other cloud applications, right? Your data is everywhere, your identities are everywhere, and they're growing very quickly. So certification today, in terms of zero trust, what it means in terms of access governance is you need to provide a complete 360-degree view to the decision maker that has to make a call on access. So what in practical worlds that means today, it's the identity information and the privilege information that exists within applications, whether they're on-premise or in the cloud, applies to non-human identities as well as humans, as well as being able to look at the sources of identities. So you may have the latest identity management software from Okta or Entra, which is Microsoft, and so forth, or you have a traditional mix. You may have still some applications that are authenticating to the legacy ADFS systems. And then you may have provisioning tools, homegrown, third-party IGAs, whatever it is. All of that is in the mix. So when you certify today, you have to really build that 360-degree view of the identity so the user and decision maker can make the most accurate and timely decision about the identity. That's number one. Number two is enforcing the principle of least privilege that we just talked about, which includes obviously segregation of duties. We include that in that component because we come from not only protecting the company bottom up, but also top down from the board level. So we are concerned about the loss of companies' assets and trade secrets and everything else that are usually attacked through a segregation of duty problem. So, we've heard about in the news where people with poor controls can buy merchandise like laptops and sell them on eBay and create millions of dollars of losses before they're caught. So enforcing that least privilege and segregation of duties helps you really prevent the losses, and also I'll mention waste and obviously fraud from occurring in the enterprise. And that's where access governance framework that is built into SafePass will help you keep your company out of the the newspapers for the wrong reasons at a very high level, right? The third point that we wanted to emphasize how Zero Trust enables access governance is, or access governance enables Zero Trust, is basically monitoring and auditing continuously, right? So Zero Trust principles guidelined by NIST, as an example, talk about continuously monitoring privileges, over-privileging, identity access, and so forth. So at SafePass, we recommend when you put together your governance framework and you mature that over time, so as you reach the higher levels of maturity, it's not sufficient just to monitor the risk at the time on a periodic basis, right? That's currently what most of the market is doing. They do a periodic review, maybe a quarterly, semi-annually, and even that's a headache. But we're moving now to this continuous approach. So we monitor access at the time it's granted to joiners, movers, leavers, right? Like these as the access changes to that set of events, we want to monitor and go to the next deeper level of monitoring, not on the surface like the old days, but really get down to the impact, or what we call materialized risk. So just because someone had access to suppliers and payments and we took that away, well, what happened during the time they had that access? We need to monitor that and make sure that they did not create a supplier, whether it's a AI agent or a human agent, they did not create a supplier and funneled companies' limited resources to that supplier without the right level of authorization, just because they had an elevated privilege for whatever reason, right? So monitoring has changed completely under new access governance capabilities that are needed to fight the battle against the risks, cyber threats, and so forth. So I mentioned risk. Let's dig into that. So risk mitigation strategies that then enable that access governance to be fully executed in your enterprise, we see these as 4 components, right? So I mentioned previously that the risks of segregation of duties, and how do you mitigate those risks by continuously monitoring the access, identity access to sensitive entry points into your systems, where a conflict between those entry points creates a loss, a fraud, or a waste action or incident. And we can also give you this in a dashboard format. So in our latest and greatest capabilities, you can see where the hot buttons are within the enterprise by looking at risk exposure, where you can actually define the potential loss to your company based on risk that is detected but not remediated or mitigated. The second element of that strategy is controlling excessive privileges with automated reviews. So we talked a little bit about the user access review process, periodic access review process that's been in place for many organizations, whether it's done through emails or spreadsheets and SharePoint, or it's automated in tools like SafePass or others. What we are bringing to the table now in 2025 and onwards is basically providing more automation to the reviewer, more augmented information to the reviewer, the ability to look at deep dive on the privilege level access. I'll give you a common example that has been a problem with UAR process for customers. They look at the roles. They typically start with a user, they see what roles they have, they extract the data from some tools, send it out for review through a campaign, whether, like I said, automated or not. And then it comes back, hey, it's all good. The problem is that, let's pick an example of an ERP system. So let's say you have a role in ERP called finance manager. And in your mind, finance manager is somebody that has access to general ledger, but it turns out they also have access to subledgers because they want to verify that the entries, for a good reason, the liabilities and assets are posted from subledgers into the general ledger accurately and completely. So they need that access. But now what you've done is expose them possibly to the ability to go and reverse liabilities and assets, right? Because if they can go in the subledger and make a change. So your goal was to give them access to inquiry only into payables ledger, let's say, but your down deep privilege actually gave them access to create entries and liabilities in that subledger. And that's a very common problem that has been ignored for, surprisingly, for decades, right? And now what we're seeing is with the newer technologies and systems, that's becoming really a major risk that needs to be mitigated. And so we are building capabilities into the our risk mitigation strategies and enabling that into our products so you can get that 360-degree view that I talked about earlier. The third item here is the removing of the orphaned accounts. Again, a practice that we have preached to the market and followed at our customers for many, many years. It's getting more and more of a needle in the haystack because of the growth in the number of identities that are out there. So we think a lot about entities within the application layer, but what I'm surprised to learn every time I talk to a customer and ask question is that how deep it goes, right? So you really have to take your entire technology stack and build a unified approach. Many times you have good processes in place and it appears to be good on the surface, that you're taking away, you have automation, you're taking away access from the application, but they've been granted access through a BI tool or in more modern days an AI tool, and that access still exists. So you're not doing a 360-degree review of all identity access, and you're not going deep enough. I mean, we are also helping our customers look at identities at the OS and the what we call components of cloud these days, right? The infrastructure layer. What are the identities that can be hacked and used by bad actors to bring your business to a halt? So full stack analysis of orphaned accounts and quickly providing that visibility on a unified framework that can help you mitigate the risk completely, not just on the superficial surface level. The last point we'll make is around centralized monitoring and alerting. Goes without saying that, you know, with this explosion of applications, purpose-built applications, cloud applications, multi-cloud, hybrid, that more than ever there's a need to have a sheriff in town, right? And so being able to make sure there's centralized management and alerting and workflows of all incidents that are reported. I mean, most of our customers and ourselves are also abiding by these policies of disclosure, right? Disclosure policy around incidents. So let's say there is an event that occurs, a risk event occurs. You are also obligated to alert your customers to maintain trust. Obviously, you want to prevent that from happening, but you need to monitor for those incidents across the board in a centralized way that can be used to put your teams into actions in case there's an incident, to communicate and obviously recover and be a resilient organization at the end of the day, right? So the combination of these four pillars of strategy will enable you to modernize your maybe outdated zero trust framework into a framework that is ready to meet the demand of the current technology framework. So in a nutshell, as we come close to this end of this presentation, I'll leave you with a few ideas, this being one, that if you take some of these new risks we identified today and mitigation strategies, you know, turn that into a continuous compliance approach and include these controls, integrate these controls into your operations, which is essentially your digital platform these days, right? So automate the reporting and evidence collection. Many times, people have good intent. They even have good design for their controls framework. When we talk to folks, that they have thought through a lot of things, but they haven't been able to execute that because of technical challenges or lack of capabilities, bandwidth, etc. So what we encourage you to do is to, once you lay out the strategies for the modern zero trust framework, is to then automate that to ensure automation provides you the evidence so it can be independently observed by third parties like your IT auditors, your regulators, and your management to ensure that these controls are operating effectively and that at the end of the day, you're complying with your zero trust policies. And we also see a kind of a fire drill, a reactive approach to audit, and we want to change that. So what does that mean, a proactive approach? So the proactive audits, what that means is your controls are tested daily or frequently. You don't wait for the audit cycle to begin. You do constant testing, and then your audit goes a lot smoother. You have fewer findings, if any, and then your remediation, which is the big headache from these audits, where everybody, runs to the cover. They don't want to see their name on a finding. That problem goes away, and you become part of the solution. So it's a cultural shift. It's the way you think about your company, as something you do to safeguard your own well-being in an organization on a financial, reputational level. And then have the capability to leverage the analytics for risk insights, right? So being able to look at the needle in the haystack, things that are not obvious. I'll give you an example. So there are millions of transactions around our big enterprise customers that go through their systems on a monthly basis, right? Whether it's payments going out or revenue coming in, etc. So, and there's just no time. You cannot put enough people or tools to review every report and reconcile every report, right? You certainly do that at the GL level, at the framework level, but not at the transaction level. So transaction governance is a great way to build out heuristics and rules, or even apply AI to it if you're ready for that, and then start picking up needle in the haystack as a way to predict potential compliance issues and prevent risk from materializing. So we'll leave you with some action items that you can build into a plan for the road ahead. Another idea that we'll leave you with is aligning your security with business goals. I hear a lot from the senior executives that are putting good money into security products, and if you visit some of the analyst shows as well, you'll find that that this is a big ask, right? That the senior management just doesn't see the alignment and ultimately the ROI, return on investment, from all the security gobbledygook that we talk about every day, right? They don't see how their money's getting put to use, but they keep opening up the checkbooks because they don't want to see their paper in Wall Street Journal, their name in the Wall Street Journal, right, in the paper. So so think about how to internally business justify the alignment of security to business goals. And here are some considerations we'll leave you with. So the policies themselves have to be top down. So ultimately, an enterprise is nothing but a governing entity to meet to maximize the shareholder, and more modern way of saying is stakeholder needs, right? So design those policies that align with your business goals, and then make sure those policies are supported by the security workflows, right? So how does a user get access, or an identity get access to assets, information, data, etc.? they are coming top down, because your senior management, I can guarantee you, has a very good idea of what their growth targets are, what their controls are at a business level. And so alignment with them will give you much more visibility into how management thinks and how the execution of their business plan aligns with the security needs, especially around access to the crown jewels of the enterprise, which are these high-risk systems like the ERP system, CRM systems, etc. Okay, balance security with productivity. We also see that there's a battle, there's tension in the organization between those that they want flexibility and others that want complete security, zero trust. And where's the balance? The reality is that some security risks are acceptable as long as the risk is mitigated. And we spend a lot of time with our clients helping them build mitigation and monitoring tools that can be trustworthy and they can have confidence. So find that balance, and obviously, don't get in the way of customer service and supply chain management and all those critical parts, human resources that are critical to making your business successful. Engage business shareholders, again, stakeholders. So again, talk to your customers, your employees, your suppliers, your senior management, and get them involved in the discussion around security and how good security and good access governance under the zero trust framework we've talked about today also helps them be part of the solution, as opposed to be the part of the they see as a hurdle or a challenge that's slowing them down in doing what they're doing. So engaging them is a great idea. And then measure everything, right? We are big here at SafePass of providing our customers KPIs and dashboards on every element of access governance, and we continue to find that customers love that. That's one of the things I love about SafePass. We metric everything, and so controls are great, but if you can't see the big picture, it's not going to align well with your senior management goals, and they'll have a hard time seeing the value. So as we bring this session to an end, I just want to leave you with some takeaways, summarizing that and concluding that zero trust is a practical, scalable approach. It's not just a buzzword. It's a real way of building the enterprise class battle-tested security for your enterprise. Hopefully some of these techniques on risk mitigation and controls will help you benchmark your own organization today, what maturity level you are, and then go to the next level from where you are today. The second takeaway is the policy-based governance enables agility. So we have this debate in the industry about policy-based versus what was the old way of doing things, which was built, unfortunately, on a very kind of a static way, which was role-based. Roles are static. They're outdated the time you would deploy an application. So, but business is dynamic. So we need a dynamic solution. We're going to leave you with this idea that AI is just putting a lot of pressure on the traditional approach of controls and policies tucked away behind a firewall, because it doesn't happen that way anymore. So you have to move to a policy-based approach as you consider governance, tied to policies that can be dynamically adjusted and constantly monitored. The third takeaway is the automation that drives risk reduction and compliance. So manual mitigation, and reduction of risk through corrective actions is no longer sufficient because of the speed at which business is expanding and transacting. So risk can materialize in minutes and hours versus days and weeks. So you just don't have the ability in the speed at which business is happening and the data and identities are growing to do it manually. So if you're still on a spreadsheet and an email world, this would be a good time for you to make a business case to your senior management aligned with their goals. And the last takeaway is the start small, iterate, and scale, right? That's a generally a good idea for any new initiative. So we're here to help our customers experiment, make sure they get it right, and make sure they're successful with it before they scale up.
Wow, what fantastic insight. And we are out of time. So we won't have time for Q&A in the end, but we will absolutely reply to all the questions we've had in. So I'd just like to say a huge thank you to everybody for joining us, and a big thank you to Adil for sharing his great insight around this really insightful topic today. We hope the discussion helped you cut through some of the noise, and that we've shown you how Zero Trust is not just a buzzword, but a practical framework for actually strengthening access governance and building resilience within the organization. So we'll leave you with, you know, the theme that Zero Trust is not just a one-time project, it's a mindset and it's a continuous journey. So therefore, if you'd like to continue the conversation with us, please feel free to reach out. We are here to help. So that's all for today, and we'll see you next month when we'll be digging into access governance challenges for those of you that run Oracle ERP clouds. So we'll see you then. Thanks and goodbye.